Good afternoon to this webinar, to the second IRU-POLIS webinar on zero-emission logistics in a peri-urban environment. We will wait a couple of seconds to get all the people in. We have around 100 registrations, so I'm quite pleased and really hope that we see a lot of you, and I hope some of you have attended the first webinar. In case that's not the case, you could still rewatch it on our POLIS website in the news item on the first webinar. Everything is linked. Let me give a brief introduction on the housekeeping rules. So this webinar is recorded. And in case you have questions, please post them in the chat. The organizers will proceed and assess what you have written and state them to the presenters or panelists there, depending on how much time we have. And the webinar recordings, just like the first one, will be made available on the POLIS Network YouTube channel and on the POLIS website. So just to give you a brief overview, those who have not participated in the first webinar, IRU is the International Road Freight Transport Union and the International Road Freight Transport Union. And they basically take care of the industry and the OEMs. That's what they represent. And then POLIS is more looking at urban mobility, and or our members are mobility agencies or cities and regions. So we are representing the city side. And to give you a very brief overview of what we had in the first webinar, we had an introductory webinar on zero-emission freight from long haul to last mile, where we provided an overview to more than 110 participants, and the recordings are available, as I have mentioned. Now we will talk about the peri-urban environment, and on the third webinar, which will take place on the 16th of April after Easter, the topic will be future of energy infrastructure, where we're going to take a look more onto the infrastructure and less on the vehicles itself. What do we mean with logistics in the peri-urban environment? Just a brief overview. The UNESCO defined the peri-urban space as zones of transition from rural to urban land uses located between the outer limits of urban and regional centers and the rural environment. The boundaries of peri-urban areas are porous and transitory as urban development extends into rural and industrial land. Just briefly to explain you that, and also we would like to highlight that this peri-urban space where NextETRUCK is operating, which is one of the presenters, that is basically something which is hard to define, but we are not looking into inner cities, but we're also not looking at the entire region. So that's basically the definition. And zero-emission logistics context in this webinar is basically, we are talking about battery electric or hydrogen trucks, or when we talk about hybrid, then it is a mixture between hydrogen and battery electric. And we are only looking at heavy-duty trucks. So we are not going to discuss zero-emission freight from the perspective of smaller vehicles or cargo bikes. So there's a clear definition according to our webinar, at least. So I would like to briefly now give the floor to my colleague, Ted Zotos from IRU, who will introduce the speakers.
Hello, everybody. Warm welcome from my side as well. So, as Niklas rightly introduced the webinar, 3 out of 4 Europeans live in cities at the moment. So the importance of delivering goods in cities is quite high. In this panel, after the presentations will start, we will have Pedro Gomez, who is the Clean Vehicles and Air Quality Cluster Lead at POLIS. Pedro leads the POLIS Clean Vehicles and Air Quality Working Group and is responsible for several key legislative topics. Between them is Fit for 55 package, Clean Vehicles Directive, CO2 standards for trucks and buses, and other examples. Pedro is also involved in several EU-funded projects in the area of sustainable transport, which makes him a relevant person for this webinar. Second, alphabetically, is Robin Lataire. Robin is a project engineer with a long experience at Colruyt group. He is working on steps towards zero-emission transport for the Belgian group since 2013, so quite a long experience there too. Alberto Ruffino is alternative propulsion business development manager for hydrogen mobility at IVECO group. He will give us a presentation shortly. And Stephen Wilkins is a senior research scientist at TNO. TNO is acting as the project coordinator of the NextETRUCK project. Translated in English is the Dutch Organization for Applied Scientific Research, project coordinator of NextETRUCK, as said, and Stephen has a background in hybrid and electric vehicle systems and powertrain modeling and simulation, with a specific focus on battery management systems. So now we'll have the presentation by Stephen on the NextETRUCK project.
Okay, just 1 second. And I think I have to. Hopefully you can now see the slide.
Perfect. Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you,
Okay.
Stephen.
So firstly, thank you for the organizers' chance to present NextETRUCK today. As said, I'm a senior research scientist at TNO, and we're quite proud of the NextETRUCK, which I'll spend a few minutes telling you about here. So this project, among others, is really dedicated to the next generation of electric trucks, which we hope to see in and around the cities of the future. So there are several policy targets, as you're aware of, which govern the CO2 reduction from heavy-duty vehicles in future. The new targets, which were agreed last year, set the targets from 2025, 2030, 2035, and onwards. These new proposals for stronger CO2 legislation will help accelerate the transition to zero-emission vehicles, whether they're electric or hybrid or hydrogen. The current status, of course, of the proposal are that these are provisionally adopted, and it's up to the member states, of course, to continue the discussion on these. These run in parallel with some of the city policies, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, which will govern the types of vehicles we're likely to see on the road in the future. So meeting these targets, these policy objectives, these strategies require several different insights, both from a technical and a non-technical viewpoints. And there are several challenges to the upscaling of electric truck deployment and development. What's very important is to have, let's say, independent assessment of the different technologies as they come into real-world operation. But it's not only the vehicles, of course, when we're talking about electric trucks, it's also the infrastructure. So there are other policies like the alternative fuel infrastructure regulation as part of Fit for 55, which needs to support these types of trucks coming in practice. But there are other technologies which are running alongside to help with logistic planning, to help with the monitoring and health tracking of these types of vehicles, such as digital twinning, which I'll mention a bit later on. So there are many, many challenges ahead of us to getting these trucks, and we have a relatively short period of time to reach the targets set by the EC. So there needs to be fairly rapid adoption of these technologies in practice. Of course, these new CO2 targets are split across the different vehicle weights. The heavy duty, the medium duty, the light trucks and vans, the buses and coaches occupy different parts of the CO2 contributions from transport. So very often there are projects looking at heavy duty and also some of the last mile light duty. NextETRUCK is looking in the medium duty range. So this range from 7.5 ton up to 16 ton trucks. So these are not the the very large trucks, but they are relatively large that can still come into urban environments and exit urban environments with a fairly large cargo payload. So NextETRUCK as a project started a couple of years ago. It comprises 3 OEMs, engineering partners, research partners, infrastructure partners, focusing on the next generation then in the medium duty class range to look at new architectures of the vehicles, new solutions in terms of digital management of those vehicles. So as I say, fleet management tools, zero-emission virtual integration into existing fleets, the business models and the market uptake challenges, so new arrangements for how to run these vehicles and own these vehicles. A large part of the project is also focused on optimizing the total cost of ownership. So the challenges we all know when we move to zero-emission vehicles is there are higher typical upfront costs, although the operational costs can be lower. That depends on the way that you're using the trucks, but to optimize from a system perspective needs new approaches. And of course, the fast charging infrastructure, we need the ability to make sure that we can charge these trucks at a rapid rate so that they don't interrupt the use of them in terms of long duration charging time. We have some overall targets, which I'll come back to in the next slide, in terms of energy efficiency and extensive real-world deployment. So these are the objectives for the trucks. So again, this is focused on the medium-duty freight haulage range. We have a 10% target efficiency overall. This, of course, affects the operational costs from the energy usage of the truck, but it also allows for the downsizing of some of the components, including the battery. Digital twins, so the use of models connected to data from the vehicles and supplying optimization back to the vehicles in terms of fleet management is a key part of the project, both for the planning and operation of the vehicles. And we're working with a large number of partners to come up with new tools to help the deployment of these types of vehicles. Part of the project also focuses on the architecture. So it's well known that there's a lot of space for design optimization to take into account safety, sizing of components, integration of new technologies, ultimately improving the TCO reduction that we'd like to see. Also, alongside that, thinking about new charging concepts, including infrastructure demonstration within the project to make sure it's cost efficient, flexible, and compliant with all different types of business practices and fleet operation. A large part of the project, beyond developing the vehicles and the technology, is to really have an extensive period of real-world usage. So there is at least 6 months of demonstration, which is unusual for a European project, where we will get insight into extended use of the vehicles over a target of around 200 kilometers daily operation. And lastly, the new business models to help with the uptake, the user acceptance of these solutions, and also look beyond the project at how we can accelerate the uptake in future. Okay, so within the project, there are 3 use cases shown here, connected to the 3 OEMs from the project. So use case 1 is for the truck developed by Ford Otosan, based in Turkey, and this will be transporting parts between various manufacturing plants. Use case 2 is to focus on the use of the technology to refuse collection in Barcelona. As you can imagine, the use of electric trucks where there's high auxiliary uses also has additional challenges beyond simply the kilometers driven. And use case 3 really is within the frame of this webinar. So out of town operation up to and including entering into the City of London, experiencing both urban and peri-urban driving conditions. So a bit extra information about those use cases. So this is use case 1, which is the Istanbul Ford Otosan use case. As mentioned, this is using the vehicle. This is a 16-ton vehicle, so at the upper end of the medium duty scale. with 200 kilometers daily operation between 2 manufacturing plants over an extended period then of 6 months to see different weather conditions, different driving conditions, different traffic, etc. This is combined with the charging infrastructure solutions, so overnight charging typically to support the day operation with a relatively powerful DC charger. And the charge management, the planning for the fleets of these vehicles will be developed by Banyan and ABB. So the second use case, this is on large volume waste collection. This is a slightly heavier truck, so this extends beyond the medium duty to make use of the weight allowance for vehicles that have high numbers of auxiliaries. This is looking at waste collection, so furniture, electronics devices. Since it's within the city of Barcelona, it's not a repetitive route. It will vary depending on the demand service. So we're likely to see very different types of operation of the vehicle within the urban environment and taking it to outside of the urban environment as well. Again, this is linked to overnight DC charging. The same charging solutions will be provided for this and the same cloud solutions as well. And the third use case, so this is at the lighter end of the spectrum. So this is an 8-ton vehicle operation within a very, very large city within London, compliant with the zero-emission zones which are coming up. This will have a satellite depot outside of the city, entering within the city, and again, varied operation in terms of routes and payloads, etc., within the city. This is coupled to AC charging for night-based charging. So if we look at these vehicles, this is the IVECO classification table, which maps out what types of vehicles in terms of axle configuration, chassis configuration. NextETRUCK focuses then on the weight range from the 7.5 ton to 16 ton, so IVECO class 1, 2, 3. And the various demonstrators, you see, we have a nice split of what's expected for the regional delivery use cases and also the utility vehicles as expected in the IVECO classes. So lastly, one key aspect of this is it's recognized for both logistic planning and also the operation of the vehicles. It's not always a straightforward swap from a diesel-based vehicle to an electric vehicle. And the reason for that, of course, is that you need to take into account the range of the vehicle, the planning and availability of charging infrastructure, but also with introducing any type of new technology, you need to track the health, anticipate things like predictive maintenance, feedback for the driver and operation. And this is where, from this project and several others, we really see a need for more sophisticated digital twinning, so the coupling of a model with data coming back from the vehicles in practice. And these are some of the innovations which are done, as I say, within NextETRUCK. So in summary, there are several challenges to upscaling zero-emission vehicles in practice in terms of the timescale, the maturity of the technology, and the policies that we see coming in. It's very important that real-world testing teaches us that the data and modeling of these types of vehicles will be more important than for conventional vehicles. I highlight within this presentation also digital twinning offers a way of monitoring, optimization. Ideally, we move to some standard digital twins which are used independent of the OEMs for mixed fleets as we start to shift towards zero-emission vehicles in combination with solutions from charging infrastructure. NextETRUCK is a project, of course, we're very proud of. It's one of a set of projects at European level realizing solutions. We focus on this Goldilocks area of the medium duty. And of course, there's more collaboration possible beyond this project. Okay, thank you very much for listening. I hope there's some nice discussion coming later on.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I think Alberto is following with his presentation. Alberto,
yeah,
can share your screen.
Yes. I say that I cannot start Okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no.
Okay. Do you see my screen? You see my presentation tab?
Not yet,
Not
not
yet.
yet. Can you just try again?
Okay.
While you're searching for to share the
Okay.
screen, I just wanted to let you know, in case you have questions, please state them in the chat or in the Q&A section as you prefer.
Okay. So good afternoon to everybody. My name is Alberto Ruffino, and I'm working with IVECO, and within IVECO I am responsible of the business development for hydrogen mobility within the alternative propulsion business development team. Here a quick overview about IVECO. Let's say the IVECO was born in 1864, a long time ago, when Conrad Magiro started his new company, his new operation. And meanwhile, Fiat developed his own truck division as well as Lancia. And in 1975, IVECO, the former IVECO group, was born. And during his life, other companies started joining the IVECO, such as Astra, and then at Fiat Powertrain. And then in the last years, we went through some reorganization, and the last one is the creation of IVECO Group, basically in 2022. We as IVECO Group, we are focused on, of course, financial services through IVECO Capital, buses, and truck. In the truck we cover both light, medium, and heavy commercial vehicles, as well as then the powertrain and the specialty vehicles for both military application and heavy off-road application. When it comes to CO2 compliance and sustainability, we are extremely committed to CO2 emission reduction, and we target net zero carbon emission zero, actually by 2040. So either our chairperson Susanna and I, within our CEO Gary Mars, are really pushing to achieve full sustainability of our business, and to anticipate or even overachieve the target that we have been given by the European Commission. When it comes to technologies, we have, of course, a very challenging mission in front of us, and we do really believe that there is no silver bullet, no single bullet to achieve zero-emission mobility, because we have different emissions from the urban mission with very few kilometers per day, low payload, to the long haulage mission when we arrive to 600-700 kilometers per day, 44 tons. So a different mission, different customer, different use case. For the reason there is no single technology. So we believe that both battery electric and hydrogen vehicle are necessary to comply with the target and to achieve our decarbonization target, as well as the biofuels, like the biomethane, that we already have in our portfolio, CNG and LNG, since quite a long time. We see that the electric vehicle, battery electric vehicle, are more suitable for urban and regional delivery, because of the range and the compromise and the balance between range and payload. And we do believe that hydrogen could address the long regional and the long haul mission. This is more or less what we see, because it is important to achieve the zero emission mobility, but on the other side we have a customer who has to perform his own duties on a job, and so it's very important to provide vehicles that allow the customer to do the same job as today in a profitable way, I would say. What do we see? That as far as diesel and internal combustion engine are concerned, we see that they progressively will be progressively replaced by electric vehicles in the light commercial segment, and gas can contribute, but in some niches. But we see that there could be a switch to bio CNG, so that will in a well-to-wheel approach will be zero emission. As far as battery electric are concerned, we see that by 2025 we should have something by like 10-20% of the market of battery electric vehicle for new registration, then progressively growing up to 50% by 2030 and 70-90% by 2035. As far as the heavy duty are concerned, we see that the diesel will of course drop and should be below 50% by 2030. The gas today is the only alternative viable solution to both hydrogen and battery electric vehicles, and it could also grow in the medium term time frame thanks to biomethane. And as far as the electric vehicle are concerned, so both battery electric and hydrogen vehicles, we foresee that we should have some between 5-10% of the market in 2025. And then progressively grow up to 60-80% by 2025, and say according to the CO2 regulations and according to the strategy, the decarbonisation strategy that we gave to ourselves. When it comes to the hydrogen mobility, as I was saying before, we see hydrogen to first address the long regional emissions as well as the long haulage, because the range and the payload are two key factors for those emissions, and so the battery electric vehicle could, because of the weight of the batteries, could not fulfill these requirements. Our application that will go on the road with the H2O project by the middle of this year, so with the first real life operational test, is a tractor 6x2 that has a power up to 645 HP. We have a storage capacity of 70 kilograms at 700 bar that allows to achieve approximately 800 kilometers, and very important is the refueling time that it is up to 20 minutes, so it's comparable to diesel. Actually, another important factor for this mission is the refueling time, and the hydrogen is much more competitive than the battery electric. When it comes to hydrogen, but in principle, when it comes to zero emission mobility, the truck technology, the vehicle technology is very important, but is not enough to make it happen. So we really need the ecosystem, the hydrogen ecosystem, so the creation of a brand new, a completely new ecosystem. And when it comes to the ecosystem is made by different stakeholders, starting, of course, from the vehicle, from the product, from the OEM, but very important are also the hydrogen companies, so the oil companies also, and the hydrogen companies to produce the hydrogen and to develop, of course, the network infrastructure. We will need new services to handle this new mobility that, I mean, it's quite different from the conventional one. Of course, we need, as I was saying, the infrastructure that is a significant challenge that we are facing, and other enabling factors such as the incentive to facilitate the market uptake at the beginning, because as you can imagine, the technology is not as convenient as the diesel. Or let's say the total cost of ownership is not as convenient as the diesel. We need the proper regulation to also incentivize the network development, and we also need technical standards to rule the hydrogen station, the hydrogen refueling activities, and so on. And so we need a complete new ecosystem with the participation of, let me say, all the stakeholders, meaning all the hydrogen company, all the OEMs, all the member states. Only with the participation of all the stakeholders we can create ecosystem and not creating a niche. The challenge is very, very important. It's very, very tough, but yeah, we are cooperating, or let's say the industry is cooperating among the different stakeholders to really make it happen. And so little by little we will arrive and we will switch completely to the zero emission mobility. When it's come to, as I was saying before, to project, when it comes to deployment of vehicles on the road, we are going to provide the first vehicles to the customer to be used in real life operation within a project named H2All. And the picture that you can see on the screen is relative to the inauguration of the station that took place at the end of June in 2023. So we are happy that by the middle of this year, we will start real life testing with customers, and this is a significant step forward toward the hydrogen mobility. As far as the growing of the business, the mobility is concerned, of course, we, given being the hydrogen more focused on the regional long-haul emission, we expect that to have tens of stations and hundreds of vehicles in the activation phase, that is today up to 2026, more or less, along the most important and most, I would say, crowded TEN-T corridors, as you can see on the slide on the left. And then in the scale-up phase, we expect to have hundreds of stations and thousands of vehicles up to 2030, and this would also allow to enlarge the coverage of the corridors with the station and the vehicles. Of course, this will be progressive. It cannot happen in one day. And as it happened already, for example, in the past for the LNG, and little by little, if we also want, by the way, to achieve the very challenging targets given by the European Commission, all the main corridor, the main routes, and all the countries will be covered by a station, hydrogen station, and little by little, the conventional truck will be replaced by hydrogen vehicles. This is more or less all about, and then of course if there are questions, I will be more than happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Alberto. I think we already have a couple of questions. We can, you're just on time, so we can take at least the first one. I don't know if you can see on the chat, or do you want me to
No, if
read
you
it
can.
out?
Yeah, if you
Okay,
can.
so Leticia De Blanc says, you mentioned biomethane, battery, hydrogen. Isn't it costly for society as a whole to develop all alternatives and their supporting infrastructure? Can we afford all? So,
Oh, this is a good question. This is a very good question. Yeah, it is very expensive, but as I was saying before, we unfortunately do not see one only technical solution for all the different missions that we have. Of course, it would be very desired to have just one technology, and also to have one refueling or a recharging network. Unfortunately, being the mission, the customers and the vehicle very different. If we think about from light vehicles to heavy vehicles, very different. Fortunately or unfortunately, we have to utilize all technology, and the industry is not only the thinking of IVECO, the position of IVECO, but the industry. There are many studies, also independent studies, that confirm that we need all the technology to achieve the complete zero emission mobility.
perfect. Thank you very much. The second question I think will be covered during the panel discussion. So I will invite Robin to take the floor and just let us share the screen, the PowerPoint.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Robin,
Hi.
the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Ted, and thank you, Niklas, for inviting me and to give me the possibility to present the Colruyt Group. What I will talk about is a little bit about the Colruyt Group, a couple of zero-emission transport projects that we are having, and then highlight a little bit as well the H2Whole project, which we are part of together with IRU. Colruyt Group is still a family company. And if you go to the next slide, you will see a whole bunch of brands that we are using. On the top corner, you have brands that that our customers know and that are mainly active in Belgium and in France. Colruyt lowest prices is one of the biggest one, and is our retail shops actually all over the country. On the other side, on the bottom right corner, you have our brands with which we serve business to business clients. That can go from refueling companies, but we also have solutions. I will focus a little bit on Colruyt and on solutions, as we have projects with zero-emission trucks in those two. All those labels that we are having are retailers, and all of them have dedicated logistic needs. And for us, it's then important that we have dedicated solutions for all of these needs. If you go to the next slide, we have two focus projects where we've been working on the last couple of years. On the left side, you have solutions. Solutions is doing city distribution, typically. Typically, it will have multiple drops to different business clients, typically hospitals or daycares for kids, or other types of business like restaurants or hotels. And it will do city distribution rounds, which are quite short. Will enter the center of the cities, and will perform about 30,000 kilometers a year. So those are trucks that are really busy with the delivery aspect of the logistics, and much less driving around. This was our first project where we have, here on the picture you have 4, but we have 5 fully electric trucks with electric refrigeration units on top. And they were implemented last year since the summer, approximately the summer they were driving. And they are performing quite well for the moment. We are learning a lot. And based on the findings that we are having here, we are placing now an order for an additional 10 vehicles to continue serving. These vehicles are based in Lot, which is on the south part of Brussels, and they are on a daily basis running into Brussels. And probably if you live in Brussels, you will have seen them already a couple of times. So very specific cases for city distribution. We are using the 18-tonners vehicles because we still need the payload that comes with these vehicles. On the right-hand side, you have our first fully 44-ton full electric truck that is driving for Colruyt lowest prices. And with Colruyt lowest prices, we generally do full truckloads to one shop. So you have a trailer that is shown there, and it's filled with goods, and all of those goods will be dropped at one single shop. And typically, one shop will take 3 of those trailers. So a very efficient way of working is to just come from our distribution center and drive directly to a shop and there unload all the goods at once. We have many shops in Belgium, more than 400 if we go over the different brands. And based on that, the activities that these trucks are doing are characterized as regional deliveries, but with a long haul characteristics. The 120,000 kilometers is quite a lot for regional activities. So it's quite somehow leaning towards the long haul activities. If you go to the next slide, we find it very important that we are able to continue to drive with these vehicles up to the shops. And therefore we are systematically asking to continue or to enter into dialogue and together with the cities and the municipalities in order to be able to achieve this and to be able to continue delivering the goods to the shops in the most efficient way. Colruyt really, so we understand that those heavy trucks have an impact, whether it is congestion, whether it is noise, whether it is emissions. But this is still the most efficient way of entering the cities and the municipalities. And we understand as well that we need to find solutions that suit everybody, that suit the different stakeholders. And that's why we were eager to always enter into a dialogue with the stakeholders. Why is this so important? Well, as I said, we need 3 full lorries like this on a daily basis. And if you would replace those trucks by smaller vehicles, then you would have so much more transport. It would be much more inefficient, and could lead to more congestion. Will lead to more congestion most likely. This doesn't mean that we're not actively working on those other types of transports. For home deliveries, we are using vans. And in cases where it makes sense, for example, solutions, in some cases we are using cargo bikes in certain locations. When the solution meets the logistic needs, we are using those solutions. All right. If you go to the next slide, I have a couple of images where you can see the evolution of how a test phase looks like with what we did actually with the 44-ton electric truck. We started very small in June 2023. So we had those vehicles. We have these vehicles since June 2023. And in the beginning, we are doing small travels and gradually expanding the routes all over Belgium. And if you go to the next slide, you will see that we have been able to, in October, go somehow a little bit everywhere in Belgium. This is a map of Belgium in gray, and you see where the truck has been everywhere. All right. On the next slide, I will enter into a little bit the presentation of H2O. H2O is a project funded by the European Union and the Clean Hydrogen Partnership. If you go to the next slide, you will see what the objectives are of the project. Basically, it's going to be a deployment of 16 heavy-duty trucks across Europe, in France, in Switzerland, in Germany, and in Belgium. Lots of companies are involved in the project, and the project includes the making of the vehicles and the installation of hydrogen refueling stations. And the target is to achieve accumulation of more than 2 million kilometers. If you go to the next slide, we will have more detail of how the project is deployed. So ERM is the project manager, and we have IRU, Hydrogen Europe, Sphere, and Waterstofnet in together working for coordination, dissemination, analysis. The Belgian deployment will be done with trucks built by VDL and Plastic Omnium as fuel cell supplier. And Colruyt Group will be the truck operator, and we have built a refueling station as well on one of our distribution centers. The German deployment will be done, all the other deployments will actually be done with IVECO trucks, which Alberto already showed a nice picture of, with fuel cells from Bosch and from PowerCell. And then every country has its dedicated HRS provider, Air Liquide for France, H2 Energy for Switzerland, and Total Energies in the German deployment. The truck operators are various, and that will allow us to have a nice feedback from on the usage of the truck. If you go to the next slide, you have a couple of pictures, if I'm right. Yes. So on the left-hand side, the VDL truck. On the top one, already striped and branded with the Colruyt logos and branding. And on the bottom, it was on the hydrogen. So it's a picture from the Hydrogen Week, if I'm correct. And then on the right-hand side, the IVECO truck in construction. The last slide, I think, is the next one. On the next one, we have the different stations. So the Rothenburg station in Switzerland is already built and operational since 2021. The project started in 2019, if I'm correct, 2018 or 2019. And we are, so the stations are quite advanced. Fos-sur-Mer, Alberto also showed a picture from there, open since 2023. We opened ours also in 2020, end of 2022, beginning of 2023, at 350 bars. And in Germany, they are still, the works have started, but it's still work in progress. So that's an overview of what's of the status of H2O at this date. And I think that was my last slide. Yeah, so again, acknowledgement of the European Union funding through the Clean Hydrogen Partnership.
Thank you very much, Robin. I think we have a question in the chat. We can take this one, and then we can jump into the panel. Uday from BET Motors is asking, I don't know if I pronounce your name correctly, excuse me if not, is asking Robin, how much range do you achieve with the 44-ton trucks, and how do you manage the charging of these trucks?
So the range we achieve is between 250 and 300 kilometers. Actual driving, quite heavily loaded, and on the daily basis, what we are doing is we will the truck will drive in a 2-shift operation. a very early morning shift where it will start to a first chop. And every time it comes back to the depot, it's able to recharge a couple of either during the 45 minutes break or a short coffee break. It will recharge a little bit, and it allows the truck to do between 300 and 350 kilometers in one shift. And then there is about 2 hours between the two at the end of the first shift and the start of the second shift, where the truck is able to almost completely recharge. And it can start all over again in the afternoon, making it possible to go up to 500, 550, 600 kilometers per day. If it's all well planned, when it's all well planned.
That's not bad. So for the panel discussion, just to remind you, we will have Pedro Gomez from POLIS. He's the Clean Vehicle Center Quality Cluster Lead. Robin will participate as well. Alberto Ruffino that presented earlier, and Stephen Wilkins as well. So if you want, you can turn your cameras on so that people can see you. We will start with a very general introductory question on the progress to zero-emission freight, and more specifically in peri-urban or urban environments. And I will start with Robin because of him available since he presented last. How do you think is the transition towards zero-emission freight progressing from your perspective, and what works well? And if you can name the most significant bottleneck that you have faced in environments of cities or peri-urban logistics.
So let's say we are starting right now, and we are trying to accelerate as fast as possible. What we see from a technical point of view, because I'm more from the technical side, is that there are some developments that are still ongoing and that need to happen. And we are very much looking forward to, for example, on battery trucks to megawatt charging, the possibility to charge even faster than what is possible today, and also from hydrogen for the vehicles to really become available and ready, and on the hydrogen station sites also to have the harmonization towards high-speed refueling of the trucks. So those are the bottlenecks that, not the bottlenecks, but the action points, the technical action points on which we see lots of works at this moment. Bottlenecks on city access. It's a more general question. Where really the focus must be on identifying that necessity of freight and understanding that access to the cities will remain important, and that the best way to do it, that you really should prioritize the best way to do it in the most efficient way. And the developments on zero-emission vehicles allow you today to keep on going with the most heavy vehicles, allowing an efficient way of delivering your logistics. Does that answer your question, Ted?
That answers my question quite a lot. I have noted progress on infrastructure that has been needs to be made, and quite importantly that access to cities and goods transported to cities needs to be.
And one more technical will be the permitting and access to grid power.
That's true. That's true. I will jump to Stephen because he's the first one on my screen. Stephen, from your experience in NextETRUCK or other research activities, what is the progress and how is this progress going? And if you can name what works well and one bottleneck that is the most important for you.
So I think in the Netherlands, at least beyond NextETRUCK, and we'll have this later in NextETRUCK, I think the one of the challenges is the learning curve. Robin had a nice presentation where it's clear Colruyt Group is upscaling the number of zero-emission vehicles, but our experience with end users is it takes time to understand how these types of vehicles can be used in their operations. So everyone from the driver to the planner, it requires quite a steep learning curve. And we worked in the Netherlands with a lot of companies who were trialing these vehicles, the early vehicles. And what we noticed is they were very conservative to begin with in how they were planning the vehicles into their operation. And so I think that will take time. It will take time for people to become much more familiar with the technology, to have a think how the charging infrastructure and operational planning needs to go hand in hand with the vehicle types. So I think that will take time to share that. And there's, from a research institution viewpoint, I think there's real value in sharing those guidelines, those lessons learned between companies, so that not everyone is learning on their own. There's chance to exchange that information on a broader scale. So that we see as helping. I think one of the challenges specific in the Netherlands, which is a major issue, is the permissions on charging infrastructure. Certainly planning permissions, access to the grid, we see as being something that we need to confront with smart solutions. It takes quite some time at scale to get permissions to get the actual permissions on charging infrastructure, especially heading towards megawatt level charging infrastructure. And there we have maybe a need for the transport domain to talk more closely with the energy domain to come up with smart solutions to understand what's possible from both sides. That's something that we see coming up quite a lot in projects.
Perfect. I will ask the same question to Alberto, and I just want to raise here that trucks, as we know them, are working almost in the same way for how many years, Alberto? Almost 100. So this is a big change, of course, and Alberto is the right person to reply, I guess, from the vehicle side.
Yeah, no, of course, this is a great change, and yeah, let's say that of course we cannot tackle everything all together. As I was saying, we are starting from some missions and from some areas, and little by little we will grow up in the lineup, in the volumes to address all the different missions and all the different countries. So I don't know if I reply to the question, but this is what we see so far when we are thinking about the areas and how to address it, all the mobility, looking at the years in front of us.
Maybe, Alberto, what is the most significant bottleneck, especially for vehicles in urban, peri-urban areas that you have faced at the IVECO Group?
Well, let's say that we see in principle, this is not only for the urban area, but the main challenges that we see in front of us are two. One is the refueling and the recharging network, because today neither the recharging infrastructure nor the hydrogen refueling station are existing. And while you can move, you can produce truck in Germany, and then you can move to France, to Italy, to Holland, everywhere, the station or the refueling charging can be moved. So although we are tackling and selecting the mission very carefully in order to assure that the mission is compatible to the very very low, little network. On the other side is a challenge even bigger than the technical challenge on the truck. I'm not saying that the technology is already there or is perfect there, but for sure the recharging network and the refueling network is the bottleneck that we see today. The second is, as I was mentioning before, also trying to answer to a question, is the financial viability of the technologies, in the sense that, of course, we need to compare the total cost of ownership of the hydrogen or battery electric mobility compared to diesel, because what to say, we have customers that have to perform a job, and so they are very careful, or let's say very sensitive about the cost. And today there is no TCO parity with diesel. Of course, we see that when the volumes will go up, the cost of the vehicles, or the cost of the technology, the cost of hydrogen should go down. But we see few years. We need few years to make it happen, and we need incentive. If this will not happen, if we will not achieve full TCO parity, at the end of the day, we need, unfortunately, to transfer the cost as OEM to the transporter to the shipper, and the shipper to the final customers. So the risk that we see is that the green mobility will cost more, and so will cost more at the end for the end user, because of course we have business case that has not let's say, we are not making money since the very first year, but at the end we cannot subsidize for many years the green mobility. So the challenge that we see is to achieve the parity, and the risk that we see is that at the end the green technology will be, the green mobility will be more expensive, and then as it always happens, the end user, the final end user, has to pay the bill.
Thank you very much, Alberto. Pedro, what about the cities? How is the transition going? And yeah, please reply to that question, and then I have another one for you. So if you haven't,
thank you. Thank you for the invitation. First of all, I have to say I'm not an expert in electric trucks, but I work on the topic of electric mobility, and I'm curious also to learn a little bit more. And I heard some of the remarks initially before me. So I just wanted to say, first of all, that the cities are not against cars or trucks. We just feel that we need right-sized vehicles fit for the purpose. And also because we should not just look at carbon emissions as the main impact of transport sector. We need to look at air pollution, road safety, noise. So there's also a reason why cities prefer smaller or right-sized vehicles that are not just related to the emissions of greenhouse gases. So this is maybe the first note that I wanted to bring. The second one is that indeed we can look at from the point of view of the management of the public space and compliance with the air quality regulations, with the Green Deal and the European Climate Law. Cities are leading the way, and they are responsible for managing a lot of what's coming in the ground. So all of these legislative pieces, in the end, it's going to be the local and the regional authorities that will have to implement them. So we have to be ready for this. It's important to notice that POLIS supports this, and we mentioned here, for example, the permitting process and the grid connection. And before I explain a little bit more some details of what the cities can do, I just wanted to highlight this, and I will share the link that POLIS is supporting the European Commission under the Sustainable Transport Forum, which is an ad hoc group that supports the Commission in implementing AFIR that we mentioned already today. And there's a specific subgroup on public authorities, and we have recently published guidelines and best practices for the permitting and grid connection process, because it's been highlighted very seriously as one of the major bottlenecks to the development of vehicle recharging infrastructure. I will put it in the chat, don't worry, in case you are curious to know a little bit more. But now talking a little about how the role of cities can be implemented here. So, and this is not new. So we have a little bit of the stick and the carrot in the hands of the cities. More and more cities are implementing zero-emission zones or low-emission zones, urban access regulations. So this comes in two ways, either due to the vehicle size or the vehicle emissions. So of course, I understand, Rowan, that indeed it's becoming more and more of an issue to bring the larger trucks to the cities, at least to the city centers, and this tendency is going to be more and more prevalent. But there's also examples of nice carrots, or at least a partnership. So, for example, some cities are supporting the acquisition of cleaner vehicles, scrappage schemes for vans for smaller vehicles. So, for example, Amsterdam now for 2025 is going to have a zero-emission zone for vans, taxis, and other vehicles. So not just targeting private cars, but also commercial vehicles. Brussels is going to do the same for 2035, and they have a support scheme for smaller companies up to 15,000 euros to buy a new van that can comply with the upcoming zero-emission zone regulations. But if we look at the regional level, for example, Flanders, the region of Flanders has established a Green Deal, bringing together public and private operators from logistics. So to try to work together and find common projects and innovations and create a platform for dialogue, because indeed, as Robani said, we need to dialogue. The cities need to work with the private sector, and the private sector needs to work with the cities, because in the end, we are looking all at the same objective, which is doing decarbonization the right way, let's say. Another good example of regional public-private partnership, we go a little bit north to the Gelderland region in the Netherlands. They have what they call the clean energy hubs, which is locations defined by the region, operated by private sector, where we have several clean energy sources, so hydrogen, electricity, but also biomethane, natural gas. So these are operated by private sector at a regional level to ensure that there's sufficient charging or refueling infrastructure outside of the city, but that provides at least charging and accessibility and conditions for the trucks to do the long haul to the last mile distribution. So these are good examples of public and private partnership that are pushed, not just pushed because they also involve the private sector, but led by cities and regions. And I will stop now because I'm already taking a bit more time.
Thank you very much, Pedro. I think your response gave a bit of context in what cities are doing. I will get back to Alberto now with questions about IVECO and your strategy to achieve decarbonization. Are you focusing specifically in certain geographical areas of Europe or urban, long haul, etc.? And do you have specific solutions for different needs that can cover transport operations?
Okay.
I think you covered part of it during your presentation, but we'll come back to this because I think it's interesting to understand in a geographical perspective.
Okay, let's say first of all that of course, as I say, we have a clear decarbonization roadmap, but also we need to comply with the CO2 regulation that are today different from the light commercial vehicles and the heavy, medium and heavy commercial vehicles. So when it comes to region or vehicles, we need in any case to address the needs. So what we do on the light, of course, is slightly, or let's say, is different. Let's say in this way on the heavy commercial vehicle. As far as the areas are concerned, we are focusing on the. We have two rationale. First of all, we target the market with higher volumes, our total index volumes, and that are Germany, France, Benelux, Italy, and Spain. And also we are very careful, or we are focusing also on the ecosystem condition. Although let me say the regulation are European, then the subsidies are released on a national level. And so let's say this is an example, or let's say also for hydrogen, the hydrogen company are not in all the countries. So we also try to follow or to work where the ecosystem is more attractive, is more positive. For the time being, seeing that Germany, France, Benelux are, the most attractive or the most promising ecosystem. And then, of course, this is for the activation phase, when we will have to achieve higher targets of decarbonization. Of course, we need to cover more application and more countries to achieve the 50, 60 or 90%. Of course, at this stage, at the point in time, we will have to have zero emission mobility everywhere in Europe and in any kind of application. But of course, we try to be a little bit selective, because it will be quite impossible to deploy zero emission mobility in the same time in all the countries in Europe. So it will be unmanageable.
In the meantime, we have questions from the participants. So I will stay with Alberto, and I will ask him what Yoshinobu asked. Do you think where or which country LNG will come from, and how likely do you think CN LNG product possibility and amount are? Also, if fuel cell electric vehicles is mainly to be used in the future, won't the investment in LNG trucks be wasted? If you want, you can, for the panel participants, you can type your answer in the Q&A, or if you can take it now.
I will take it right for the benefit of time to be sure. Now, as I was saying, that also for LNG is the same concept of the ecosystem, as I was saying. So there are countries where is more promising, also the biomethane, and other less. No, we don't think that what we are doing or what we have done in the past for LNG as such would be wasted, because we do believe that the biofuels, if not since the beginning, as it will not happen, but in the future, can contribute to decarbonization. Then I don't recall, sorry, the question for the fuel cell. There was a part on hydrogen of the questions.
Is it mainly to be used in the future when the investment in LNG trucks will be wasted? So if hydrogen will be the future, what's the reason of investing?
No, as I was saying, we need both hydrogen and battery electric vehicles almost since the beginning, I would say. And LNG biomethane would be something we expect something to be on top of electric vehicles.
I think not investing is more riskier than investing. That's also a risk. There is a question to Robin and a couple of questions to Pedro. I would recommend that you take it if you can in written. And I will go to Stephen again, and I will ask him which vehicles are needed for peri-urban environments and urban environments for freight, and whether zero-emission long-haul vehicles will also enter urban centers.
Okay, it's a good question. So I think Robin already made the comment that from a transport efficiency viewpoint, especially for supermarkets in cities, it's more desirable to take the larger vehicles in. partly because of driver costs and also just the transport logistics. I think that's one of the use cases that we see. If you look at the Netherlands is quite geographically it's a logistic center for a lot of operations in Europe, especially from Rotterdam, the TEN-T corridors that reach out to the east and TEN-T corridors that go down south. So there is a real need to support long-haul vehicles through the Netherlands, especially with private charging infrastructure, but especially also with public charging infrastructure. And it's the public charging infrastructure which is a bit more problematic at the moment. There aren't neat solutions in terms of the booking mechanisms, actually how those are going to be used in practice. For the question of which vehicles go into the cities, though, we are involved in many projects also with the 3.5 ton class of vehicles where there's different driving license requirements for those vehicles. I do agree there with the point that Robin is making. If we are replacing the larger vehicles with very, very many smaller commercial vehicles, perhaps there are better shared logistics solutions there where we can still reduce the number of vehicles on the road and have the transport efficiency that we're looking at. From a NextETRUCK perspective, yeah, as I said earlier, our perspective is that we are looking for this Goldilocks solution where we can have still quite a lot of cargo being transported per vehicle, per driver, without going to the very large vehicles, but also equally not going to many small vehicles for last mile distribution. So maybe that that compromise makes sense for these vehicles that go both between cities and intercities.
Thank you very much. Maybe Robin or Pedro have to add something on the same question. Robin, first.
Not sure what to add. No, I'm gonna Pedro. Up to you.
Okay. Yeah, Pedro. According to your experience, like what trucks are fitted to which areas, and what the trend will be in the next years?
Again, I'm not an expert in trucks, so my answer, of course, will be limited to my level of expertise. What I see is also a trend when it comes to research and innovation. So we see projects like NextETRUCK, but we see other projects in the pipeline when it comes to the calls for research and innovation funding, which is about light commercial vehicles, frugal vehicles. So indeed, there is also a push from the research and innovation and the European Commission funding to look into smaller vehicles. And I understand there's the need to have more efficiency, and of course a big vehicle transports more cargo, but also we need to consider not just that, but also the interests of the other stakeholders. And again, it's a really hard puzzle to address. It's a new world when it comes. So we started electrifying cars, now we are going for the heavy duty electrifying, but also hydrogen. And it's a little bit different than the conventional diesel trucks. It will require some changes. For example, I'm thinking that something that wasn't mentioned yet, due to the weight of these electric trucks and also the big trucks, even if they are not electric, there's also impact in road infrastructure at city level. So of course, this all needs to be taken into consideration. So I would say the future is going to be a mix between bigger and smaller vehicles. When it comes to the peri-urban areas, of course, the bigger vehicles might be more efficient, especially if they are connected to consolidation centers. And we mentioned also the TEN-T regulation. So now with the establishment of more than 400 urban nodes that they will have to have a sustainable urban mobility plan, it's going to be important to use this as an opportunity to also bring the logistics aspects of this sustainable mobility plan. So to develop sustainable urban logistics plans to be hand in hand with the mobility plans of the cities and the regions. Again, we should not be talking just about cities. We should be talking about the functional urban area. And this, of course, includes long distance, short distance, last mile. I hope I provided some insights. Of course, this is an opinion from not an expert on trucks, either electric or non-electric, but as someone that works with cities and believes that it's important to balance the different needs.
So I will have to ask, I think, a last question, because in 5 minutes we'll have to close the session. Starting by Robin, and I will mix a bit here with what are the potential bottlenecks that might come in the next 5 to 10 years, and what are the trends that might impact the change. So, Robin?
I think we've already tackled a little bit of that. The transition will involve lots of people, and it will impact a lot of companies, and all of that is something that needs to go very rapidly. Within the logistics companies, you have many small businesses, and the way the technology is changing and the cost structure is changing, it might have quite a big impact. This is going to be one of the big challenges, I think, in the near future. From a technological point of view, we're still gonna see so many changes, and having a clear line of view of what is going to be the right path is gonna be very complicated. And as Alberto actually said, unfortunately, there will not be a one solution fits all anymore, and that's a little bit of the tricky part. You need to clearly choose the right technology and the right way of working for the specific use case, the specific fit for purpose. I think that was quite well said as well. You need to optimize it and make it choose the right technology at the right spot. I think it's both a challenge as an opportunity.
I will ask the same question to Stephen. So, Stephen, what are the potential bottlenecks in the next coming 5 to 10 years, and what are the trends that might come up?
So I think I go back to the first comment I made. I think there is genuinely a steep learning curve for everyone using these types of vehicles, and we need to confront that by more practical, hands-on type projects, so that it's not necessarily fully technical reasons. It's just the apprehension in switching to new technologies. There's a difference between, let's say, feeling comfortable with the technologies and what it can and can't do, versus, let's say, more paper studies. So a lot of that comes from incentives to get trucks into operational environments where customers can gain insights and see how they work in practice and not. I do think that going back to the EFIR regulation, which is quite a steep target to have the charging points deployed for the member states by 2030, looking at the regulations, and Pedro highlighted that there are quite some bottlenecks to actually getting the charging infrastructure out there. I think the most realistic charging infrastructure we're going to see is going to be the private charging infrastructure to begin with, but that requires investments from companies in having charging infrastructure on their premises and thinking about how that works in logistics terms from sites like depots. I think the challenge is towards the public charging infrastructure that we'd like to see, and this also includes hydrogen charging infrastructure. We do need to continue to push there, but maybe that's not going to be available as soon as the private charging infrastructure, and that will affect the uptake as well. So I think those in general, those two themes of lessons learned and the availability of the infrastructure are going to be crucially important. I think in terms of the technology of the vehicle, that's continuing to develop all the time, but it's mainly the lessons learned in infrastructure.
Thank you, Stephen. I will get to ask this final question to Pedro as well. Pedro, what might be the bottlenecks and the trends in the next coming years that cities might face in the transition to zero emission?
Vehicle trucks in general, trucks in particular, or zero emission vehicles in general. So if it's for the
because
trucks,
you represent cities, you
of
can
course,
also like,
one major bottleneck could be the access, and I don't reinvent the wheel here. It's the access to the grid. So when you talk about charging depots, both for trucks, but also for example, buses, for public transport fleets, it's indeed an issue that might become bigger and bigger in the future, which is the need for charging infrastructure for the heavy duty fleets, let's say, either for transport of people or transport of goods, and the lack of capacity of the grid to provide adequate charging capacity. So we've seen that in countries like the Netherlands, where the grid constraints are becoming more and more of an issue. Belgium also starts to have the same kind of issues. I come from Southern Europe, so I come from Portugal. Southern Europe is not yet in the same state. So at the moment we are seeing a two-speed Europe in terms of electrification, but this is going to become an issue. I've seen some interesting ideas on how to maybe tackle these issues. I know, for example, that there's initiatives like the UK Power Networks, which already provide maps of the grid capacity. So it's a helpful tool when it comes to planning for recharging infrastructure, to know already if the place that I want to, as a local planner, the places that I want to install a depot charging for heavy duty vehicles actually has the capacity. But I had also some interesting discussions with electric truck operators that were mentioning that why not use the same depot for both types of fleets, for example. So buses usually operate during the day. We can actually have zero emission trucks operating at night because they produce no noise, they have zero emissions. So there might be a possibility for synergies in this. But of course, it's still a long way to go because there are different systems. We need integration. And of course, as a truck operator, you need to make sure, and you need to trust the fact that, okay, the infrastructure is available for you when you need it, because the whole operation is planned depending on that. So you cannot just say, okay, your truck was not charged because this bus spent too much time on the depot and many other issues.
It's interesting, and it's interesting also to say that 1 megawatt charger might take as much power as 1,200 apartments, so that's also something that puts a lot of pressure in the grid, especially in cities where cars will be charged. And
if I may add, also we have the research and innovation also in innovations like smart charging and vehicle to grid. So where actually these vehicles become batteries on wheels that can actually support the grid. So it's just starting. We have a project where POLIS is involved, which is scale. So we test the vehicle to home, vehicle to depot, etc., etc. So in the future, I think this is also going to be a smart way. Sorry, pardon my expression, to maybe minimize the congestion and the impacts of on the grid.
That will be a very interesting mathematical exercise. And I will close with Alberto, because we have 2 minutes left. Alberto, very briefly, what would be the bottleneck and what would be the biggest trend for you in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, let's say the bottleneck, maybe, I mean, I don't more or less, I already talked about it, that the plan for the next 5-10 years, of course, is to grow in terms of volumes. So basically in terms of countries and in terms of granularity of the network within the different states and with the different applications. So the target is to, well, of course, achieving the target by on the vehicle side to extend the lineup of the zero emission applications, and on the networks, on the ecosystem side, to have more granularity, more stations for refueling, and of course we expect and we target that the competitiveness of the zero emission mobility will achieve parity with diesel in the next 5, 7, 10 years.
Thank you very much, Alberto. I would like to thank you from my side. I will give the floor again back to Niklas.
Yes, wonderful. What we have already seen and heard many different aspects basically, and one of this aspect that was mentioned several times, and from the perspective of the freight companies, but also the cities, is the future of the energy infrastructure. And we will separately talk just about this in the third webinar, which is coming up after Easter on the 16th of April. And when you scan the QR code, you can register directly. And what we have also heard is that research and innovation are key aspects to learn more and to elaborate more on the topic of zero emission freight. And therefore, we continue with the presentation of several of the so-called IVECO cluster projects. The IVECO cluster is a corporation of zero emission freight projects, and there we're going to present the project called ZEPHES, which IRU is involved, and Escalate, in which POLIS is involved. So there will be again further synergies, which is absolutely fantastic. And we would really like to see you again on the 16th of April. And with this, I would like to say see you next time. And I hope you have enjoyed this. And in case you want to learn more about the first and the third webinar, you can always visit the POLIS homepage. And there will be, of course, a short recap as well on the homepage of the Friends of IRU. So thank you very much in the name of IRU and POLIS. And we wish you a pleasant afternoon. And hopefully we will see you again soon in other events.